So we're on our last section of notes. This is the same question, motivation or what motivated Europeans to come to the New World, however you want to put it. Just real quick to recap, we're looking at 1600s-ish is where we're starting. In Europe, in England, um, everybody practiced the same religion, but there were some things that happened which caused people to want to move or migrate. There were push factors which pushed them out of the country, and pull factors which pulled them into a new country or a new place. So we talked about the difference in the Catholic Church. Everybody was pretty much Catholic. Some things didn't go right, and King Henry VIII made his own church, the Church of England. People didn't agree with that. The printing press allowed people to get their ideas out. So this guy named Martin Luther, he made a list of complaints about the Catholic Church, nailed it to the church door, and people saw that and were like, wow, that makes me think for myself too. Everybody was given more access to things like the Bible thanks to the printing press because we can make copies of it pretty quickly. So people started traveling to the New World. We had these separatist groups, which were people who broke away from the Church of England, like the Pilgrims and the Puritans and the Quakers. So they had a better life here in the New World, but there were still some things that they missed from the Old World, or things that still just could have been better in the New World. So Anne Hutchinson, she was this Puritan speaker who got excommunicated or banished from her colony, the Massachusetts Bay Colony, for speaking what she thought was right. The Salem witch trials happened in Massachusetts, especially in the town of Salem, where there were a bunch of people. 200 were accused, 30 were found guilty, and 19 were executed by hanging for witchcraft. The Quakers still had to find some sort of solace, some sort of protection, some refuge in the New World because they were still being sort of persecuted. That's not good. So William Penn founded the colony of Pennsylvania, Penn's colony, for the Quakers' safety. And this guy, Roger Williams, he said he saw what all was going on and he said, okay, we need to have a separation of church and state in the colonies to protect people's religious beliefs because they're different. Everybody believes different, and that's fine. So we talked about how we get to the New World. England wanted to set up permanent colonies or places to live. So you had to have this thing called a charter, which pretty much just is written out, said, yeah, you can start a colony. That costs a lot of money. So we had these big companies like the Virginia Company who worked to establish these colonies in North America. One colony that was established was Roanoke. It's the first English settlement in North America, but it failed. It's called the Lost Colony because everybody disappeared. Don't know what happened for sure. Jamestown came along after that, though. That is the first permanent English settlement in North America. The leader was John Smith. He pretty much just took control and he just told people, hey, we're going to have to work harder, we're going to have to work smarter, we're going to have to specialize in what we do and just work together, and with not only with the people in our town that we've brought over, but the people who already live here and know about the land. So the question came about, do we really want to come here? Does everybody didn't feel that way? So what if you couldn't find the money? What if you really wanted to come but you couldn't find the money? Or what if you weren't sure if you wanted to come? What would really convince you to come? So the headright system was developed where a grant of land was given to settlers in the colonies. That was usually like 50 acres. So that pulled people in. They were like, cool, land. So that increased the population in the New World, and that helped increase the labor force too. So there were more people to work. Then we have this group of people called indentured servants. These were people who wanted to come over, but maybe for whatever reason they couldn't. They didn't align with the headright system. They couldn't get land given to them. Or maybe they just didn't feel right doing that. I don't know. But you had these indentured servants, so people would say, "Hey, I'll work for you for until I pay off my debt if you'll pay my way over to the New World." So eventually, though, we talked about at the end of the last video, eventually you run out of people who are willing to do that. People who just don't want to come willingly work for somebody else. Because what if they don't keep their word? Or, I don't know, what if you just never get your freedom? So they sort of started running out of people to come willingly work. So, what happens when no one else wants to come work? Write this down. This thing called the Middle Passage is really, really important. We will look at this quite a bit in class because it's something really important that I want you to know. And that was a horrendous voyage that brought enslaved Africans across the Atlantic Ocean to North America and the West Indies, which is the New World. So, slaves were forced to work. They had no pay, no freedom, no rights, nothing. So whenever they ran out in the New World, whenever they ran out of people who were willing to come over and work, or whenever they just got like too big of a farm or too big of a harbor or too big of some sort of business and they couldn't manage it themselves, they said, we need more people to work. This thing was going on called the slave trade in Africa. And people were like, okay, well, we'll buy into that. We'll get some slaves to come work for us over here in the New World. Why not? So we'll look at that. We'll look at the slave trade. We'll look at this thing called the triangular trade. But the big thing that we're going to talk about right now is the Middle Passage, and that was just the trip itself. We'll look at the boats and how people were just thrown in there and the disgusting conditions that they were forced to endure only to go be slaves. So yeah, we'll definitely talk about that a lot. Write this down. Something else that happened were called the Navigation Acts. So Britain or England, Great Britain, whatever, it's all the same. Uh, Britain was in debt from a recent war. So they had anytime you go into war after the fact, you're out of money because you take all the money that you have and you spend it on supplies and food and whatever, keeping up your country and your soldiers. So they needed money and they saw an opportunity with the new colonies. So a lot of the times those charters were given by the king. So the king was like, "Hey, we'll be able to get more money back from these colonies because they're going and they're settling these places in our name." So Parliament passed these laws, the Navigation Acts, that restricted trade in the colonies, which earned Great Britain even more money. So pretty much the colonies were only allowed to trade with Britain, or if they traded somewhere else, they had to use British ships. So all of the things that they did instead of making money for themselves, like building the boat themselves and just using their own personal boat to go out and trade with somebody, they had to like rent a British ship and take it that way. So all the money basically is starting to not really go to the colonies. Britain doesn't really care about the colonies as much, they care about themselves. So they said, hey, this was our big bright idea. This is our people that are over here doing this stuff. We need some money back for that. We're in debt, we're awesome. So, people started getting a little bit upset about that. So we're going to talk about that. That's going to lead us actually to a war. So we talk about a lot of wars this year. Um, but right now, the focus is on Britain. And the colonies they don't like that because Britain is way over here and the colonies are here. So if you're way over there, especially in a time before internet or telephones or anything like that, how are you supposed to control what's happening way over here? So they're getting a little upset already with these navigation acts. They're like, this is our place. We're doing all this business. Why are we having to send all this back to Britain? So really quickly, just think about some the migration to the New World. Think about some push and pull factors. I will give you an assignment where you have to sort put these factors into either push or pull factor categories. We'll talk about that. And I want you to keep that in mind because we're going to look at that throughout the year. What pushes people away and what pulls people towards different places. So that's it for notes for this question. If you have any questions or concerns, just let me know.